I'm pleased to introduce our first speaker of the day, Neil Tarallo. Neil is the director of the Pillsbury Institute for Hospitality Entrepreneurship and a senior lecturer at Cornell. Neil founded the Empowerment Through Entrepreneurship program, which provides students with the opportunity to experience entrepreneurship around the world. He has also worked assisting entrepreneurs in the U.S. military in Djibouti, Africa. Neil has a strong passion for creating environments conducive to entrepreneurial activities in corporate as well as academic settings. And here is Vico, who is in the master's program in the hotel school at Cornell.
Thank you, Emily. Good morning, leaders of innovation. I've only had the opportunity to know Neil for the past 5 months. But in that short time, in every conversation we have, whether it be in class or in his office and really anywhere in between, for him it's all about the students. And for me, that shows the true character of the man. So please, ladies and gentlemen, join me in welcoming not only the director of the Pillsbury Institute, but also the heart and soul of innovation at Cornell University, Mr. Neil Tarallo.
But the number one reason remained consistent, and it was that we want to learn about innovation. We want to understand what was going on. And I took some time to think about and look at what we've done previously to this. And I thought that maybe we could talk a little bit about how we can boost innovation within our own organization. So this is kind of like the get started quick innovation part. You know, when you get your computer, there's that little card in there that says, here's what you do to get it going right away. This is what this is for us. But as I also look back at some of the things that we talked about and also some of the conversations that I've had with all of you, I think it's really important that we get a context here for what innovation means to me or to you. And I think I can relay that best with a little story. I was at a restaurant show, a national restaurant show not long ago, and I was walking down the aisle. And to my right, there was this great big sign that said, "The greatest innovation in Asian dining." And I'm a sucker. If you put the word innovation or entrepreneurship on a sign somewhere, I have no control and I just move in that direction. So I went right up to the booth and I asked the gentleman, tell me, what is the greatest innovation in Asian dining? And by the way, this was not a gentleman of Asian descent. And he pulled out for me this device. And I said, well, that's just a set of chopsticks with a fork on the end. And he said, yes, but this is our base model. Our advanced model, you could take the fork off and you could put a spoon on, or you could put a knife on, or you could put a toothpick on the end. And I think we can all agree that that's not innovation, and that's not what we're talking about here. But what are we talking about? What does innovation really mean to us, and what are we really looking for? And while you can argue with me that those little innovations eventually lead to a big one, it certainly doesn't warrant a banner out front saying the greatest innovation in Asian dining. We can agree on that, right? But I like a little example that I use in the forestry industry. And if you think about how things happen in the forestry industry, how we started out, people would go out and chop down trees with an axe, right? And the tree would fall down, and sometimes it would fall on somebody's head. Most of the time it didn't, so this was a good thing. We stripped it off of all its bark. We trimmed all its limbs off. We cut it into equal sections. We tossed it in the river, and it floated down. Forestry industry. Step two is what? See, what happened here from where I'm standing is that the students were ready to speak, but they didn't know if they should. And all the executives in the room are just kind of waiting for me to tell them what's supposed to happen. And then the Cornell Hotel School staff, they don't know if they're supposed to speak or not at this stage. So anytime I ask a question, feel free to respond. It's okay. This is just because we're on a stage here, that doesn't make any difference. But the next innovation was what? A chainsaw. Thank you, Mr. Pillsbury. Chainsaws changed the way we were productive. It added value for our company. We cut down trees faster. Sometimes they fell on somebody's head, sometimes they didn't. We stripped the bark off them. We cut off the limbs. We cut them into equal sections, and we tossed them in the river, right? Productivity increased. Our volume increased. Our costs went down. Our profitability increased. There was value in this. It changed the way we thought about what we do. Does anybody know what they do these days? Melissa, could you start our movie for us? it grabs the tree and it cuts it, strips it of its bark and limbs, cuts it into equal sections, stacks it nice and neat. Do you think that innovation came from somebody sitting in an office somewhere? No, right? How did it change the way this company does business? Pretty dramatically. By the way, the company that we're looking at, this logging company, follows sustainable logging policies. If you notice, they're not cutting down any old forest trees, and they replant after they go through. Thanks, Melissa. So that's innovation. That's what I think about when I think about innovation. I measure innovation by the value that it adds either to my customer or to my organization, and the degree to which it increases my profits or increases productivity or increases sales. If it doesn't do that, it's either an innovation that's not ready yet, it's the chopsticks with a fork on the end of it, or it needs to be worked on a little bit more, or we should make a decision whether we should follow it through or not. So I thought I'd share with you my 10 ways to boost innovation in your organization. And I started studying innovation as a graduate student back in the early 90s with a gentleman named Dr. David Weilman. And Dr. Weilman was one of the first academics to really look at entrepreneurship and innovation in an academic setting. And for me, this was the start of a lifelong observational learning process. Looking at companies, seeing what they do. Over time, organizations asked me to come in and help them create innovative and organizational environments within their own organizations. That could be corporate environments, it could be social entrepreneurship environments, or non-for-profits and in academic situations. And I've come up with this process that we try to institute. And again, this is like the quick start guide. But when we think about innovation and what we want to do, I encourage people first to think about King Arthur. And I really like what King Arthur did. He kind of got this right? I mean, we all know about the round table. He got rid of the leader that sat at the end of the table. He created a space where people would feel comfortable coming together as equals and discussing the matters of the kingdom. And the next step for him was what? Populating that table with the knights, right? And he created champions within his organization for the kingdom. And if we take that analogy and we move it to innovation, and we think about creating an environment where we can all come together as equals and talk about ideas and talk about innovation, and we create champions within our organization who understand our vision for innovation and understand what we want to accomplish with our innovation, they are then the people that our employees and our staff, the subjects of Camelot, can go to with their ideas and their thoughts. And it's the responsibility of those champions to decide whether this innovation has the legs to move forward, whether we should cancel it, or how we should do it. Now, we should be careful because depending on which version of Camelot you read and you agree with, we should remember that I believe Lancelot ran away with Guinevere, is that right? And left King Arthur kind of holding the bag all by himself. So you want to make sure you manage your champions and your knights really well and keep an eye on what's going on. The second thing is create a process for innovation. Don't just say we're going to be innovative. And this process needs to be articulated to our company, to all the people that work there. Not just the engineers, not just the R&D people, but everybody. Because as we saw in that video, I guarantee you that it was not somebody sitting in a corporate office that created that product for American forestry machines that could increase productivity to that level. Somebody in the field probably did that. So we want to create that. When we create a process that people understand and it's well articulated, they're more comfortable moving through it, we tend to get ideas bubbling up and we can move those ideas into innovation. The third is to recognize failure in a positive manner. Ore-Ida has this really great thing that they do, the French fry company and all the other organizations that surround that. When an innovation is moving through their process and it's decided it's a failure, they do their post-mortem on it, They understand why it was a failure. They take the lessons from it that they can take from it, and then they have a cannon that they fire off. And it signifies the end of this innovation, signifies the end of all responsibility for this, and it's a cannon that gets fired instead of, professor poignantly pauses, waits for a response from his class, instead of the innovator, right? Or instead of the staff member. So that's something that we want to be thinking about. Regardless of what we think, how our staff and our employees think about failure is what's really important. And it's important to understand that failure is going to happen. The fourth is foster creativity in our organization. And creativity, I think, and I think we all agree, is really the foundation of knowledge. Without creativity, we don't move forward. We don't move the needle. So we need some creativity to change what we think about it and how we think about things. And creativity means time. Most of you that I spoke with take time out of your own personal lives to sequester yourself in some fashion and allow your mind just to wander and flow freely. And that's your creative period. But how many of you in your organization give your employees an opportunity to do that? And how many of you think and hope that they will just do it on their own at home? So we need to give our employees time in order for creativity to happen. The next is provide opportunities for collaboration. And I think this is really interesting because innovators like to believe that there was this aha moment for them where the light just goes on and I have this great idea for an innovation. But recent studies have shown that when we follow people who are innovating, that there's really a process. And while in their mind they believe this aha moment occurred, it really was a process that occurred. And that process is often filled with small steps and small failures. And the more collaborative these folks tended to be, the faster and better their innovations tended to happen. So collaborative environments are important. Airing out your innovation is important. Getting people together and giving them time, and here I go again, giving away time in your company, right? You're gonna have to double your workforce in order to be more creative and innovative. That's not true. But you have to give them time to do that and give them time for opportunities to collaborate with that. The sixth, and my students hear me say that 70% of the time when I ask a question in class, the answer is customers. Because if we don't have innovation that creates value for customers or a market, we have nothing more than an idea that's fun, in my opinion. Without those customers, without those folks coming on board with us, we don't really have anything to work with or anything to go on. So we need to know our customers, and that means talking to our customers. In our business plans that we teach at the hotel school, we leave a space for discussion about ongoing market opportunities. How do we put in place mechanisms whereby we continually have conversations with our customers so that we understand their changing values? Add that to an innovation process, and we create innovation that has meaning and value for our company. So know your customers. In addition to know your customers, we want to know our competitors. And I don't mean we want to be afraid of our competitors, but there's so much we can learn from them. I am famous for stealing everybody's ideas and adding my own stuff to it. It works. And I am always mystified at how we look at Google and what they've created there for innovation within their organization, and how few of us have taken even one step in that direction ourselves. Think about that for a minute. We were all at Google a couple of years ago, right? We all saw what they did. We saw their employees rolling down the aisles on scooters. We saw areas that were created specifically to give employees an opportunity to back away from their daily tasks and be creative. We saw areas where they could go to meet with other people who were being creative so that they could collaborate together. Don't raise your hand, but I would be willing to bet, and it's my experience when I go into organizations and talk to them, that none of them have taken even one step in that direction. And if you don't take that step, it doesn't happen. We can learn wonderful things from the successes of our competitors, or people who are near competitors to us, or people who are just in industry. and we can incorporate those into our own organization and add our own things to give our company culture part of that and advance innovation within our organization. Take that first step. You'll be amazed. Know thyself. Prior to teaching entrepreneurship, I was an entrepreneur for my whole life, without exaggeration. This was the hardest thing for me. This was always the bitter pill for me to swallow. Thinking that I was this cool manager, that my staff could come in and talk to me about anything and give me great ideas, and it hardly ever happened. And when I asked them why, they said, well, you know, Neil, you're a nice guy and you're a good boss and this is a great place to work, but I don't feel comfortable coming and sitting down to you and telling you what you're doing wrong in your organization. So the introspective really has to happen not from within you, but from somebody else. And as we talk to our customers, talking to our employees and understanding how they feel about the environment that we have and how it might change is a great place to start. Know thyself from the perspective of other folks in your organization. Foster an entrepreneurial environment. So students at the hotel school have this really, I think, interesting opportunity with regard to entrepreneurship in that we don't just teach entrepreneurship as a new venture creation opportunity, but we teach entrepreneurship from two other perspectives. So in addition to new venture creation, we teach entrepreneurship in terms of corporate entrepreneurship and how to create entrepreneurial environments and how to use entrepreneurial skills and tools within corporations, and also in a social venue, how to create social entrepreneurial ventures that benefit a community or a group of people. So our students, I think, going out into the workforce, have a really unique skill set if they're studying hospitality entrepreneurship at the hotel school to be a different kind of an employee for an organization. Creating entrepreneurship within your organization simply means giving these ideas and later innovations opportunities to grow and to become something. And by creating an entrepreneurship-like environment within your corporation, sometimes a mini business if you think about it that way, we can manage failures and successes much more effectively, mitigate risk, create teams, and be much more collaborative and productive in our innovation process. So by thinking entrepreneurially, we don't only come up with innovation, but we find ways to move it forward and through the company. I always think of champions and who would be championed for a particular innovation project as we go along. So the last one for me is I think, incredibly important, and it's teaching innovation within your organization. All of you come every year to an innovation network, and we learn these great things. I love this because I learn so much from our speakers. How many of you take that information and disseminate it to your staff and to your employees? How many of you have reached out to any of our speakers in the past or look for speakers in your area that can come and teach entrepreneurship to your employees and your staff? Because if they don't understand what you're trying to accomplish, it's not going to get accomplished. You can set all other 9 factors up here, but they have to understand what entrepreneurship means and the context in which you want, innovation to occur within your organization. Teaching innovation on a regular basis in your company will raise the consciousness of your staff and help ideas percolate and move towards the innovation process. When you read about and see these entrepreneurs on our magazine covers every couple times a year, Inc. magazine, Entrepreneurship magazine, we tend to think that maybe these people have some special innovation gene, that they automatically think of these great innovations and ideas and monetize them through entrepreneurship, and they create these wonderful companies or opportunities. But the reality is that they just understand this process, and they understand how to find market-driven opportunities where they can create innovation to satisfy a need for a group of people. That's what you want to be thinking about as you go along. If you don't teach entrepreneurship, what do you wind up with? You wind up with this big round table with a group of champions that sit around it and have lunch every day with a pair of chopsticks that have a fork on the end. So you want to move this forward as you go along. We have 3 great speakers following me. They're going to tell you a little bit about how innovation happens in their organization. They're going to tell you about how their innovation happens and how it's happening in the marketplace. And we're going to stretch you a little bit to think about innovation and how it might apply in the hotel industry in ways that you haven't thought of before. So enjoy the show. Thanks very much, and we'll talk later.